This is episode 3 in a series of 20. A link to the playlist for this series will be added to the description. Dennis Saurat and Hans Bellamy raise an intriguing question. What might happen if a satellite drifts closer and closer to our good old Earth? One thing's for sure, its gravitational pull would start to pack a real punch. The tides would grow stronger, flooding vast stretches of land, and as a curious side effect, people and animals might just start shooting up like beanstalks. These two fellas argue that this is the only way to explain the gigantic plants and animals that once called this planet home, not to mention a race of men towering at a staggering 16 feet tall. They also suggest that our increased stature and even our intelligence might have something to do with a boost in cosmic rays. Now, cosmic rays are a tricky subject, and there's been no shortage of heated debates about what they really do. It'll likely take many years of head-scratching and experimenting before anyone can nail down the truth. Professor Jacob Eugster, who's spent more time pondering these rays than most, says, like other kinds of radiation, whether it's wireless telegraphy or X-rays, cosmic rays might do two things. They can stir up mutations, meaning changes in what we pass down from generation to generation, and they can also mess with or even damage the tissues in our bodies. So in a nutshell, we're looking at a world where the pull of a wandering moon might stretch us skyward, and cosmic rays could be giving our brains a bit of a boost, though not without a few side effects, mind you. If it is indeed true that the Earth has been graced by moons that have met their untimely demise, and if this destruction has heightened the bombardment of human beings by radioactive particles, then this could very well be a contributing factor to the phenomenon of gigantism. To illustrate this notion, let us cast our minds back to the year 1902, on the West Indian island of Martinique, where the dreadful eruption of Mont Pelée claimed the lives of 20,000 souls in the city of Saint-Pierre alone. Just before the catastrophe, a dark purple cloud composed of gases saturated with aqueous vapor appeared ominously above the volcano's crater. This cloud swelled to an enormous size, spreading its shadow over the entire island, while the unsuspecting inhabitants remained blissfully ignorant of the impending doom. Suddenly, a towering column of fire erupted from the mountain, igniting the gaseous cloud. This inferno, burning at a temperature exceeding 1,000 degrees centigrade, swept through the land, annihilating all life in its path, save for one lone convict, whose life was spared by the thick walls of his prison. The ravaged city was never rebuilt, yet astonishingly, life on the island returned more swiftly than anyone could have anticipated. Plants and animals began to reappear, but all were of extraordinary size. Dogs, cats, tortoises, lizards, and even insects grew to dimensions previously unheard of, with each successive generation surpassing the last in stature. The French authorities, intrigued by this remarkable transformation, established a research station at the foot of the volcano. Before long, it was discovered that these astonishing mutations in both flora and fauna were caused by radiations emitted by minerals that had been violently expelled during the eruption. These radiations did not spare humans either. Dr. Jules Graveur, the director of the research center, found himself 2.5 inches taller, while his assistant, Dr. Rouen, though advanced in years at 59, experienced a growth of about 2 inches. It was observed, for instance, that a shoot exposed to these potent rays grew at a rate 3 times faster than expected. An irradiated plant, which would ordinarily take 2 years to reach maturity, accomplished this feat in a mere 6 months. Fruits ripened with remarkable speed and swelled to extraordinary sizes, while cacti astonishingly doubled in volume. The lower animals, too, bore the mark of these mysterious rays. A venomous lizard, known as the copa, which had previously reached a modest length of 8 inches, transformed into a fearsome miniature dragon, growing to 20 inches, and its bite, once not always fatal, became more lethal than that of a cobra. This curious phenomenon of unnatural growth, however, ceased to manifest once the animals and plants were removed from the shores of Martinique. On the island itself, the influence of the radiation eventually waned, and these monsters gradually returned to their ordinary size as if the enchantment had been lifted. Some scientists, though dismissive of lunar catastrophes, nonetheless concur that cosmic rays might be the very cause of gigantism on Earth, a phenomenon clearly observed in both plant and animal species. In the earliest phase of its existence, the Sun must have unleashed an overwhelming torrent of radiation upon its satellite planets, including our own. Even today, the intensity of this radiation often coincides with the occurrence of solar storms. In this instance, however, gigantism must have been a characteristic of life on Earth from the most ancient of times, not merely confined to the Triassic period, some 185 million years ago, which gave rise to the mighty prehistoric saurians. While it is true that cosmic rays are filtered through the Earth's atmosphere, a veil that must have been far denser in those primordial days, it seems unlikely that this density could have significantly impeded such potent radiation. Even today, these rays pass through the human body in staggering quantities, numbering some 650,000 every minute. They possess the remarkable ability to penetrate even the thickest walls of lead or the depths of the ocean, plunging as far as 3,500 feet below the surface. However, we can conclude that cosmic rays alone would not have been sufficient to create a race of giants. Still, they may well have played a contributory role. This is further supported by the fact that large animals persisted long after the saurians and the giant flora had vanished from the Earth. We have already touched upon the discoveries of the esteemed Louis Leakey, and it is worth recalling that his son, Richard, former director of the National Museum of Kenya, was but a youth when he made a discovery of extraordinary significance. The young Leakey was ascending the steep face of Olduvai Gorge near Lake Victoria when he stumbled and nearly lost his footing. As he bent down to steady himself, he noticed a large bone protruding from the mixture of sand and gravel at his feet. With a sense of curiosity, he unearthed the bone and discovered it to be an enormous jawbone, with teeth as large as a human finger. Though young Richard was still a student, lacking in formal scientific training, he recognized the importance of his find and hastened to inform his father. When Louis Leakey arrived on the scene, he was met with one of the greatest surprises of his distinguished career. The mandible was that of a colossal baboon, a creature that had lived some 500,000 years ago, previously unknown to science, and larger than any species of its kind that had ever been recorded. Inspired by this remarkable discovery, Professor Leakey promptly commenced excavations in the Olduvai Gorge, and his efforts were not without reward. During these investigations, he unearthed several bones of uncertain origin, which bore a striking resemblance to specimens already housed within his museum. Upon comparing the two, he was astonished to realize that they comprised the skeleton of an animal from the pig family. Yet unlike any pig known to man, it was as large as a hippopotamus, dwarfing its modern kin, the African wild boar. Emboldened by this success, Professor Leakey Sr. pressed on with further excavations in Tanganyika, where his diligence was again rewarded. Here, he uncovered the bones of yet another enormous boar, as well as two skulls of considerable interest, the first belonging to a ruminant of an unknown species, and the second to a kind of colossal sheep, the likes of which had also never before been seen. The discovery of this King Kong of Olduvai Gorge, while remarkable, may not stand alone in the halls of prehistoric wonders. We were already acquainted with the existence of gigantic apes, such as the Gigantanthropus or Gigantopithecus, which roamed the Chinese province of Jiangxi some 550,000 years ago, and is now thought to be the ancestor of a species akin to the fabled Yeti. The creature from Olduvai Gorge, standing a staggering 13 feet tall, was even larger than the Java Meganthropus, if one is to judge by the formidable thickness of its jaw and the great length of its muzzle. Sinanthropus pekinensis, another giant of its time, reached a height of 10 feet, while the beast discovered at Swartkrans in South Africa stood at a formidable 9 feet. This latter creature possessed the ability to kindle fire and was proficient in hunting, wielding axes fashioned from the bones of other great animals. We now understand that these enormous anthropoids were not an isolated instance of gigantism among mammals, which lends particular significance to the discoveries at Olduvai Gorge. Alongside boars as large as hippopotami and sheep the size of horses, who can say what other colossal creatures might have once roamed the earth? The evidence thus far paints a clear picture. All living beings have been progressively diminishing in size since the era of the great saurians. In surveying the animal kingdom today, we find that the only remaining giants are the elephant, which reaches a height of 13 feet, with a dwindling population of just over 200,000 in Africa, and the blue whale, a majestic creature stretching 100 feet in length, yet rapidly nearing extinction. Even these, however, seem modest when compared to the titans of ancient times, such as the Brontosaurus, which towered 25 feet high and extended 60 feet in length. Were it to exist today, this behemoth could drink with ease from the gutter of a two-storied house. The present-day descendants of these prehistoric giants appear almost comically small by comparison. One can only imagine the dismay of the mighty dinosaurs if they were to glimpse the last scion of their lineage, the Sphenodon of New Zealand, the sole terrestrial creature endowed with 3 eyes, which grows to a mere 28 inches in length. Even greater would be the shock of the scaly dragons of yore confronted with their modern descendant, the Australian Moloch, a spiny lizard of the desert that subsists on ants and measures but 8 inches. It is indeed a curious fact that all terrestrial animals continue to diminish in size. Regrettably, this phenomenon has only been the subject of study for a short time, yet it already appears evident that the largest members of the animal kingdom are either facing extinction or shrinking as if touched by a magic wand. Has this trend of diminishing stature extended to humanity as well? Some scholars assert that it has, and there is intriguing evidence to support their claims. In the Philippines, at Cagayan, the skeleton of a human being, towering at an astonishing 17 feet in height, has been unearthed. Similarly, in southeastern China, the bones of other human-like creatures exceeding 10 feet tall have been discovered. According to the esteemed paleontologist Pei Wen-chung, these remains are at least 300,000 years old. The same holds true for the remarkable finds at Agadir in Morocco, where Captain Lafanière of France stumbled upon a complete arsenal of hunting weapons. Among these were 500 double-edged axes, each weighing a formidable 17.5 pounds, an astonishing 20 times the weight that would be manageable for a man of our current stature. Beyond the sheer weight, the very handling of such an axe would require hands of a size fitting for a giant at least 13 feet tall. Further evidence of these giants comes from various corners of the globe. In Moravia and Syria, enormous stone implements have been found, with the bones of their users lying nearby. In Ceylon, explorers have uncovered the remains of beings who must have stood about 13 feet tall, and at Tura in Assam, near the border of East Pakistan, a human skeleton measuring 11 feet has come to light. However, in this instance, as with the bones found beneath a French dolmen, whose owners must have stood between 8 feet 6 inches and 10 feet tall, we are likely dealing with the descendants of giants rather than the true giants themselves. These remnants of unusually tall human beings are few in number, yet they are no less significant than the fossilized creatures that serve as the cornerstones of classical anthropology's evolutionary theories. Moreover, it is important to note that these discoveries have largely been made by happenstance, and the deliberate search for such relics across the globe is still in its very infancy. Beyond the realm of archaeology, the evidence is abundant. Giants hold a prominent place in the mythology of every people who have walked the earth, from the ancient Mediterranean civilizations to the tribes of the American Indians, from the highlands of Tibet to the far reaches of Australia. We are most familiar with the Titans and Cyclopes of ancient Greece, as well as their Nordic counterparts, the Jotun. But if we cast our gaze further afield, we encounter the mighty Izdubar of Chaldea, the formidable Emin of Hebrew tradition, the Danavas and Deities of ancient India, the fearsome Rakshasas of the Hindu epics, and many more besides. Though these colossal beings may now belong to the realm of myth, the traces they left behind, both in the earth and in our collective memory, speak to a world where giants once held sway. Across the vast expanse of the United States, particularly among the North American Indian tribes, there are countless tales of giants who once roamed the land. In the Ohio Valley and Midwestern regions, the landscape is dotted with thousands of burial mounds. There is considerable evidence to suggest that these mounds were constructed by a race of giants, some of whom may have reached heights exceeding 9 feet. During the 1800s, numerous strange and astonishing discoveries were made within these ancient mounds. Among the most remarkable were the remains of individuals of enormous size, distinguished by their red hair and, in some cases, by the peculiar feature of double rows of teeth. King Kasekemui, who reigned around 2690 BC, was the final ruler of Egypt's second dynasty, a figure of great historical significance. His earthly remains were laid to rest in the ancient necropolis of el-Ka'ab, a site that would later draw the attention of the renowned Egyptologist Flinders Petrie. Petrie, in his meticulous examination of the pharaoh's burial site, uncovered evidence suggesting that King Khafre was a man of truly extraordinary stature. The records indicate that the king stood at a height of 5 cubits and 3 palms, a measurement which, when converted using the short cubit, equates to approximately 8 English feet. However, should one apply the royal cubit, a measure reserved for the divine and the regal, his height would soar to an astonishing 14 feet and 7 inches. During the Cretan War, which raged from 205 to 200 BC, a discovery of astonishing proportions was made on the island of Crete. The remains of a massive giant were unearthed, a being of such immense stature that it was measured at a length of 33 cubits, nearly 42 feet by modern reckoning. The Roman Lucius Flaccus, a figure of notable repute, bore witness to these gigantic bones, marveling at the sight of a creature so far beyond the bounds of ordinary human size. The Greek writer Phlegon of Tralles, who served under the Roman Emperor Hadrian, also made mention of this and several other discoveries of giant remains, documenting these extraordinary finds for posterity. References to giants are scattered throughout ancient texts, echoing across the ages from the earliest days of human memory. These mighty beings are mentioned in the Book of Genesis, where their presence is noted in the days before the flood. The Book of Jubilees, too, speaks of them, as do the various books of Enoch, which delve into the mysteries of their origins and deeds. Their existence is further affirmed in one of the original 7 Dead Sea Scrolls, hidden away for centuries until its rediscovery in modern times. The Greek Apocalypse of Baruch also recounts tales of these formidable figures, as does the Damascus document, offering glimpses into a world where giants once walked among men. Even in the apocalyptic visions of the Book of Daniel, these colossal beings are alluded to, their presence woven into the fabric of prophetic revelation. Turning our attention to the Bible, we find in the book of Genesis, chapter 6, the declaration that there were giants in the earth in those days, and that the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. In Deuteronomy 3:11, we read that only Og king of Bashan remained of the remnant of giants, and that his bedstead measured 9 cubits by 4, a cubit being roughly 18 inches. Likewise, in 1 Samuel 17, we encounter Goliath, whose towering height was 6 cubits and a span. As Saurat astutely observes, these biblical references to giants do not serve any particular religious purpose within the narrative. Instead, they appear at various, often unrelated points in the text. Genesis 6, Numbers 13, Deuteronomy 3, Joshua 12, 13, 15, and 17. 2 Samuel 21, 1 Chronicles 20, Job 26, Baruch 2, and Revelation 20. In the book of Numbers, chapter 13, verses 31 to 33, according to the King James Version, 1900, we find a vivid account of a fearful encounter. And there we saw the giants, the sons of Anak, which come of the giants, and we were in our own sight as grasshoppers, and so we were in their sight. These passages bear every mark of historical authenticity. They are precise and concrete, introduced without any overarching historical or mythological thesis. They seek to prove nothing and are stated plainly as facts. They emerge in contexts seemingly unconnected, and if one were to remove them, the flow of the narrative would remain uninterrupted. Saurat further notes that the phenomena of gigantic size and extended lifespan often go hand in hand. As the cells of the body become lighter, the organism wears out more slowly, allowing man to live longer. This, he suggests, accounts for the biblical accounts of the long-lived men of ancient times and explains the association between the divine and immortality. Another French author, Michel Cargès, affirms this notion with striking clarity. As the gravitational pull was less in those ancient days, objects were lighter, blood flowed more freely through the veins, and the entire organism was less prone to fatigue. Men enjoyed extraordinarily long lives, possessed brains more developed than ours, and had faculties that enabled them to acquire knowledge in ways we can scarcely imagine. there is an intriguing parallel between our own sacred scriptures and the Toltec legend, which tells of how the First Age met its end in a terrible cataclysm of floods and lightning. During the Second Age, the Earth was inhabited by giants known as Quinametsin. Most of these giants perished in devastating earthquakes, and those who survived were eventually slain by men during the Third Age, much like the giant Goliath was felled by David. Aztec mythology, however, bears an even stronger resemblance to the biblical narrative. As Ralph Bellamy recounts, Zelua and his brother giants, fleeing the world's great cataclysm, sought refuge atop a mountain they consecrated to the water god Tlaloc. In gratitude to the deity and to fortify themselves against another flood, they set about building a Zacauli, a colossal tower meant to reach the heavens. Yet the gods, angered by such audacity, sent down a fiery rain upon the earth, and many of the builders perished. Then, according to an American legend, mankind, which had once spoken a single language, was divided and began to speak in many tongues. Here, we find a Mexican version of the tale of the Tower of Babel, undoubtedly rooted in the legend of the Cholula Pyramid, of which we shall speak further. Stay tuned for Episode 4. Further evidence of giant humans in ancient times. In the writing of this script, ChatGPT was used to correct grammar. Thanks for watching.